welcome to Two Words Wolves Pod. I'm Ryan Eichten, and with me tonight after an interesting Game 7 of the NBA Finals that saw the Oklahoma City Thunder crowned as champions, Leo Sun. Leo, how you doing?
Feels like I haven't seen you in forever, Ryan. I mean, it's
Yeah?
been a while since the Wolves played a basketball game, and I know you and I have been locked in on the Minnesota Lynx, who've been doing really, really good. They're 12-1, top of the standings right now. But it seems like all Wolves social media and the fan base went through like a summer fling in these last couple weeks with the whole Kevin Durant thing. Feels like they got their heart broken in the span of a couple weeks, and now we're kind of on a revenge tour of, you would have been happier. We were happier without them anyways, kind of thing. So it feels like this weird episode. It was like just like this weird chapter you see in sitcoms where you have your regular cast and then there's always like this guest star that comes in for like a couple episodes, like, oh, who is this person? Eventually they leave and all of a sudden he's like, oh yeah, remember that part where that character came in? That's kind of how I feel about this whole KD saga. That was like, last time I talked to you was like right before it all started, and then now it's already over, so it feels like we had a whole era in there in the middle.
Yeah, it's been funny to watch kind of Wolves fans, myself included to a certain extent, where obviously the Kevin Durant trade possibility had pros and cons, and it's just kind of funny as it seemed likely the Wolves to trade for him. You kind of latch onto the pros and the good stuff with it, and then as it kind of fell apart whenever that happened, you saw people focus on the possible negatives of trading for him. So it's been a wild ride, but for me, I was just kind of I was glad it was over more than anything, and we can focus on like more important things, including I think this NBA Finals game. I I don't know how much we want to go into this, but I think it's extremely dumb for the NBA to even allow trades like this at this point of the year. It makes no sense to me why there is even a open transaction window. To me, like that the trade deadline passed. We're still in the season. Why is there trades being allowed? Like I just think to take away any attention from the finals because of a trade that's going to impact next season, it's just so incredibly dumb to me. It's such a simple fix of like you need the new league year to roll over before you can do anything. So that was my frustration with it. But yeah, I think we'll start with this pod with the NBA Finals Game 7, Oklahoma City and Indiana. It was setting up to be a fun one. That first quarter was amazing. Haliburton was doing everything. And then disaster struck. Haliburton, as you see so often, kind of pulls back. He plants his leg down, and you see him go down in a heap. You see him slapping the floor immediately. The minute you saw that, you kind of knew what was going to happen or what it looked like in one show of the replay. And it's just, I hate like speculating about injuries. I really hate it. Like the video doesn't always show you what the injury is. And especially as people that cover Anthony Edwards, like the video is just almost useless sometimes. But this is one of those rare instances where you just knew right away. And I guess Achilles, you kind of knew right away with Tatum and Dame earlier in the playoff. But it's just, it's hard to overstate the magnitude of this injury. And it sucks that we've gotten 3 of these. And I think the stakes on each of the injuries has ratcheted up even further. Dame getting injured puts everything with Giannis and the Bucks into question, although it does kind of seem like there's possibility Giannis stays. But certainly for Milwaukee's next year is totally up in flames. And then next round, Jason Tatum gets hurt and his Achilles is done. And that puts their whole, there was dynasty talk with them coming into the season. They were the favorites up until that New York series. And he gets hurt, and not only does their season end, although it's a little bit different in the sense of they were going down 3-1 before Tatum got hurt. So they were so unlikely to win, even if they had Tatum healthy. But down 3-1, you never know. And now Boston's entire plan is set ablaze. They're not going to be championship contenders next year. And given the luxury tax penalties that are and the new ownership that's holding over their head, they're going to sell at least they're going to sell a piece or two to get under the apron and get under the luxury tax you'd expect. So like their season is totally up in flames. And then what tonight happens, where who knows what happens the rest of the game. OKC has nothing to apologize for. You won the title. You're a deserving champion. You went, 68 games, 65 games, whatever it was. They may have won this game regardless of even if Haliburton was healthy, and certainly they played a great second half. But I think Indiana would have a darn good chance of winning that game tonight if Haliburton is healthy. And him getting hurt puts it at 0. And I said this when Curry got hurt, that the Minnesota was on the healthy side of the equation, and I kind of felt like the Wolves don't have anything to apologize for, and I don't begrudge Warriors fans at all for being frustrated or saying we would have done this or that if Curry was healthy. And I take the same thing here, where OKC has nothing to apologize for. They're deserving champions, and you have to feel for the Indiana fans who, I think it's, for a single team, it's about as disastrous of an injury even like possible, in the sense of imagine this: if Haliburton like just rolled an ankle and missed the rest of the game, that would be disastrous for them and potentially cost them a title, right? But like in that scenario, you would have been fine in a couple days or whatever. But this knocks him out all of next season, and you hope to God that it doesn't impact the rest of his career, but you never know. It should, like, they go from up a few points in Game 7 of the finals to where does Indiana go? What did they do?
Right.
They don't have enough to. I mean, the East is now. It's not worth talking about this, but like the East before this injury was looking brutal. Like I meant to look this up, and I will once you start talking. Who is favorites to win the East coming into next season? I mean, we'll see how free agency and the draft plays out, but I think it's the Knicks. I mean, and Cleveland. Like those are your two options. Yeah, so those are my kind of scattered thoughts. This injury might have costed Indy a title, one of the more miraculous potential titles that we've ever seen. It might have cost them a title. It certainly costed them their next season next year. But I don't think OKC has anything to apologize for, even as they're not necessarily my favorite team in the NBA. Leo, what were your thoughts from this game?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still thinking about it. As soon as it happened and Tyrese hit the floor and he slapping the floor, immediately made me think of when Cat tore his calf 2 seasons ago, and he was kind of having the same reaction. And I think part of it was wishful thinking for me, where, like you said, I didn't want to speculate on the injury, but everyone's saying it's Achilles, Achilles. I'm like, no, maybe it could be a calf, could have been a calf. And obviously, we kind of got that report later by Lisa Salters. And I think the first thing I thought about, I mean, well, first of all, my stomach sank just because it's like, man, dude, like we were set up to have, like you said, such a beautiful game, a close game. Everything's on the table. Like this is literally for all the marbles right here. It's like, would the Warriors have beaten the Thunder? Probably not. Would the, Celtics beaten the Knicks and then the Pacers? Maybe. But it's also one of those things where, I told my wife, it's like, well, it sucks extra because Tatum already won his championship before, like when it happened to him. So again, yeah, it still sucks. It's not a good thing, but it's like at least the Celtics got one, right? Where it's like, with the Pacers now, you kind of wonder, it's like, are they probably not going to, be a contender next year, or at least not to make the NBA Finals? And definitely not a betting favorite. And, what does this mean for them 2 years from now? Because again, it's just one of those like sick feelings. And I've mentioned it before, maybe not in this pod, but I know that I've been pretty vocal about it on social media, where Tyrese Haliburton is probably one of my favorite players outside of the Timberwolves. I mean, not just in the way that he plays, but the fact that he's always kind of, people are making fun of him. He's always kind of counted the underdog, most overrated. And just again, what he stands for personally, like outside of basketball, he's always been very vocal about social justice issues and kind of getting involved in that. And so I really love him as a player. So I really just kind of hurt seeing that. And yeah, you never know what could have happened. And I don't have a personal disdain for the OKC Thunder, but I think my general thoughts on the Thunder winning, and I'll say this: first of all, congratulations, to the Thunder. They, like you said, nothing to apologize for. They won. It was fair play. They didn't do anything to make that injury happen. It was just one of those freak accidents, right? But it is something to think about. I think I put this on Blue Sky, where I feel that every team at some point, every young, lovable, upstart team at some point takes a turn, makes a heel turn, where they all of a sudden are no longer that fun, lovable team anymore. And I think that happened with the Thunder in this playoff series. At least, again, I'm a Wolves fan. You and I are both Wolves fans. We cover the Wolves, and it's something where, we maybe feel a certain way about the Thunder, but the way that they play is that they play so physical. Even for my wife, who's a casual watcher of basketball. She's like, oh man, like they're grabbing the Pacers so much, like they're fouling them so much. I was like, babe, like that's just how they play. Like the Thunder play a style of defense where they're very, very grabby, very, very foully, but they get away with it because they do it so much. Meanwhile, the other end, you have SGA and his kind of foul baiting, or Dort's flopping. Even he's reckless and he flops a lot. Where it's like they're benefiting from the whistle, kind of on both ends of it. And I think that final nail in the coffin of them kind of being viewed as a villain is the fact that they had to take out the underdog Pacers, missing the best player, who the vast majority of viewers, casual viewers watching it, were rooting for the Pacers, on this magical run, and take them out to the barn and kind of put them down. It's just kind of sad because, they did what they had to do, but it was like, that's not going to make people feel like, yeah, go Thunder. You beat the underdog team in your own home court who's missing their best player. So again, no beef with any of that. I have a lot of friends and family members that are fans of the Thunder, even dating back to their Seattle days. So again, I'm happy for them. Luck's always going to play a part in their championship moving forward. But yeah, it was sad. I think it was sad overall, just seeing them struggle in the fourth quarter, get it to maybe within 10, but you just knew that they just didn't have that juice anymore.
Yeah, it was pretty obvious to me. It was impressive watching Indiana fight back and take the halftime lead and kind of stick around, but there was never a point in the game where I thought Indiana was going to be able to win after the Haliburton injury, just because Oklahoma City is so good, and especially, I mean, just the way they play defense and the way they turn you over. Not having your point guard out there, your low turnover point guard out there, is just death. And even as TJ McConnell was doing crazy things, it was just like, TJ McConnell, go save us, was not the way the Pacers were going to win this game. And the way the Pacers were going to win this game was with Tyrese. And I know listeners of this podcast know I'm a Iowa State alumni and supporter, so that hurts doubly for me, hoping he could win a title against, like you said, an on-court basketball team that isn't my favorite in the Thunder. So to see him go down like that, it's disastrous. And I personally, I think the NBA really needs to look at shortening the season or having some concrete way of limiting these injuries, because I don't think it's undeniable that we've seen, especially the Achilles, these number of injuries skyrocket over the past
They're,
few years.
and two of these three are young guys. They're in their 20s, like mid 20s, right? Like these are, I mean, Dame obviously a little bit older, but I mean, these two other guys, I mean, these are super high contact, like Ja Morant's throwing themselves into the paint. I mean, these aren't, these are dudes that play mostly a perimeter oriented game, and they're young and they're in their, only entering their prime in Tyrese Halliburton's case.
Yeah, and so what can we do? And to me, the most obvious thing is shorten the season. I just think it needs to happen. And the obvious pushback, and why I see why it's not going to happen, is because both the owners and the players are going to lose money. The TV pot is going to be cut, and all the other revenues are going to be cut. And my argument would be that is an incredibly short-sighted way of viewing this issue. That if you just keep, guys are so much more athletic, they're so much bigger and stronger, and the spacing is so crazy. If you can look at like data where guys are running so much more nowadays during these games than they used to. It's just not, 82 games is not realistic. 65 games for guys isn't realistic. I just think that you gotta be willing to take a small cut, especially as like everything else explodes in terms of money. All these owners, I'm guessing whenever, at the same time that the Wolves ownership situation gets officially switched over, Adam Silver is going to announce that Vegas and Seattle are getting expansion teams. Those are going to cost $6 billion each, and that $12 billion is going to get split by owners. So, like, I just don't want to hear people like, I don't care that they're going to get less money, because soak up that money with the 12 bill that you're getting, 12 billion split 30 ways from these new expansion teams. Like, I think it needs to happen. And I get that there's a short-term one. I would just argue, for the good of the game, you should take a little bit less. But even if you're just a cold-hearted business person, I don't think it's good business to keep watching your young stars of the league go out there and get hurt. And if someone can show me some sort of study that this is just like bad variance, or if it's just like it's just terrible luck that these guys are getting hurt, then okay. I really doubt that. And I think something needs to change. And the most obvious thing to change is the number of games.
Yeah, I think at some point it was on the Mind the Game podcast with LeBron. I think he had Steve Nash on there, and they were talking about like lowering the minutes in the game, like the FIBA, like the 40 minutes a game, and immediately LeBron kind of recoiled and was like, "Yeah, but that's gonna mess with like the stats." And that type of stuff. And this is probably going to be one of the two greatest players of all time, saying that. And imagine if he feels that way. I would imagine a lot of other players probably feel that way as well too. And it's sad, right? Because I think I do agree with you, even though I'm more of a traditionalist in a sense of like, oh no, it's always been 82, keep it 82. But I think more or less feel like the chances that happening is going to be so small. Like them actually making that change. Like, is Adam Silver going to, you know, convince 30 or soon to be 32 owners to all vote like, hey, you know what? Hey, let's all cut back a little bit, for the sake of, our younger players, where it's like, okay, well, who are we talking about there? Because again, it's like, can you point to the length of the season being a direct correlation to why these Achilles injuries are happening? It's, I think obviously plays a part, but again, it's definitely one of those, especially with the Halliburton thing. It's like he was playing through injury, right? It's like he was
Yeah.
never medically like supposed to play in it. So it's one of those, like, again, it reminds me about a month ago, just over a month ago, I was playing pickup basketball, kind of strained my calf. Again, this is just like old dudes in their 30s playing like weekly pickups. It's not serious, but I kind of strained my calf and I was like, oh, this feels weird. I never felt this like kind of pain in my calf going around. And so I was talking to my friends, and again, for me, my Thursday pickup is my usual form of cardio for the entire week. And I was like trying to find any way to get like the approval from my wife and my friends to be like, you should be fine. You go ahead and play. But like all my friends who have played at basketball level, at any competitive level, were like, no, do you need to sit out? Because that was like Achilles or like serious calf injury, like waiting to happen if you're playing on a hobble calf. And I was like, you know what? All right, fine. So I sat out for 2 weeks and I came back, and I've mostly been fine, but I have a little bit more Achilles pain where, again, I don't want to jinx myself or anything, but all that to say, where it's like, that can just happen if you're kind of pushing through it. And unfortunately with Halliburton, and again, we all understand why he pushed through it. And, fortunately for him, he dodged a bullet in game 6, and in game 7, not so much. So it's a sad situation. I don't know if the schedule is ever going to get changed, even if that's the right move. But yeah, you kind of touched on this earlier, just to kind of finish up on Indiana. I'm kind of really curious about what their offseason is going to be like. During the finals, they made a trade where they got their or their draft pick back for next year, giving
Mm-hmm.
up this year's draft pick. And so they're obviously already thinking about the future. But I think all of a sudden now they do have to think about it, because Andrew Nemhard and TJ McConnell are going to be enough to make up for Halliburton's lack of production, or Tyrese Haliburton not being able to play basketball all of next season. Another question that I have for them is, I know Benedict Mathurin, who's been really hot and cold throughout the playoffs and the season. I know he's been very vocal about not being happy in his role as, like, having to come off the bench and, having to play a certain way. So, what is his situation going to be, as he's going to be up for, a new deal, I think soon, off his rookie contract soon. So, what moves are they going to make this offseason? Are they just going to, hey, we're going to punt and we're just going to wait for him to come back? Or are we going to make some serious adjustments?
Yeah, I don't know what to do. And you have basically no time to figure it out. Draft is
Yeah.
in 3 days. It's devastating. I really feel for the people of Indiana. I guess there's like it's not fun, it's awful, but like, what do you think about him playing? Because I do think we don't know what the medical situation really was before the game. We don't know. I'm sure their people had done the appropriate amount of risk assessment of what is the likelihood of re-injuring it. What if you do re-injure it? What does that look like? All that information, I'm sure, was provided to both the team and Halliburton before the game. Um, but you have to imagine with the Cavs, it's so reminiscent of KD 2019.
Right.
Um, but like, assuming the conversation was like, yeah, the risk of re-injuring it is sizable, and if you do re-injure it, that's likely an Achilles, and that's, would you still send him out there?
Yeah.
And with 2 games left in the finals, after he sustained this injury, it's hard to say that they made the wrong decision for me. Obviously, you got the result in hand, and if it depends on what percentage they could possibly put on it, but like, you're 2 games win from the finals. You never know if you're going to be back here again. Look at that franchise across from you in the court. I mean, the Indiana to 2012 Thunder parallels are there. You never know when you're going to be back. And so for them to, if he just had this calf injury, to sit him out for game 6 or whatever, I think they obviously lose that game probably, and we saw what happened without Haliburton tonight. It's hard to fault them for sending him out there, and it's certainly hard to fault Haliburton for going out there himself. But when he got his calf hurt in game 5, a lot of people feared that this could or might happen, and it's just awful. It's awful for the league. It's awful for Indiana.
It's awful for
And
OKC too, right? Because they can't
yes, it
even
is.
because now they have to deal with it was an asterisk. Like they would have lost or they were losing, that first quarter for a little bit, while he was playing well. Yeah, it just sucks for everyone.
And I already brought this up, but like that's why Curry getting hurt stunk too. The Wolves, I was so ready to sell. I think I said this during one of the live streams. I believe after game, I don't know, one of the live games, and I just kind of said like the Wolves don't get to celebrate this. Like I think we all would have loved to like rub it in Jimmy's face or Draymond's face, and I don't think anyone really did that because we were just kind of like, yeah, we never got a series here. We Curry missed the game, and the Wolves played well enough to sweep them out from after that first game, but there was no gloating to be done. Everyone knew what happened. I still believe the Wolves win that series relatively handily, but like you can't begrudge Warriors fans for feeling the opposite. And the same thing here. We didn't get to see the outcome of this series. We got to see it. Yeah, we now know Oklahoma City's a lot better than Haliburton-less Indiana team. We all could have told you that, and it's like you said. There's either a probable or certainly a likely chance that OKC wins this game anyway, and they don't get the full like place in history or whatever that they would have gotten. And I would say like if I saw an OKC fan kind of complaining about that, I would understand and also kind of say, hey man, you won the title. There's nothing like go enjoy your title. I said this to Tilo after the crappy Fever the WNBA game 5 I never got over. Like you have nothing to apologize for. The Fever had nothing to apologize for. The league did, but like your team wins the title. You get to celebrate however you get there.
Yeah. I mean, when you mention like, what do you think about Halliburton playing through it? I mean, it's really, I hate to, simplify it like this much, but, it is a bit of a 50-50 situation, right? I mean, if you polled fans, his teammates, the coaching staff, medical staff, I would say the vast majority of them say it's 50-50 chance you play and you can make it through game 7 okay versus you tear your Achilles and you're out for a year. I think the majority of them would say like, yes, like especially for game 7, right? I mean, he survived game 6 and looked no worse for the wear. In fact, he said himself leading up to game 7, he felt better heading into game 7 than he thought he was going to after playing through game 6. So it's like all indications were like, all right, well, it's going better. We survived it once, and this is literally the last game of the season. Like both game 6 and 7 were, winner, there were elimination games for the Pacers. So, they rolled it once and it worked out. So it's hard to fault them for doing it again, especially after he only played limited minutes in game 6 and seemed to be okay. And again, he looked like he was doing fine in the beginning of game 7 too, but it's just one of those things where it sucks because you kind of score 1 point. I don't say it sucks, but it is one of those things where you do score a point for the team, rest. For the rest reasons, sitting players out, additionally the Kawhi Leonard teams of like, oh, sit them out, you sit them out. And it's like, oh my gosh, like, back in the 90s, they would have never sat out, the 2000s, they would have never sat out. And then when this happens, like, oh, well, look, I mean, this is what happened. You didn't sit out. So.
Yeah, I thought like the players were lazy narrative or the rest stuff was always on the teams. The Spurs were like the first team to do it or whatever. It was always on the teams. The players were very rarely, if ever,
They'll always play. They'll always
play if they're healthy and able. I mean, like you said, there's like the Kawhi example of people being hurt. If the guys are healthy, they're going to play. And I
mean, Ben Simmons excluding, but yes, yeah.
Yeah, there's outliers, certainly. But like, it's crazy that they enacted this 65 game rule for awards and now this is happening. I just think you have to prioritize their health. I don't think that this type of stuff is coincidental. I really don't.
Right.
We'll never know because like we're dealing with sample sizes of 3 three guys here, but like, I don't know. I think something has to change, and I agree with you that nothing will. So, um, welcome to America, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right. Next, I mean, is there anything else you want to talk about the finals? I was excited to talk about this game, and it feels dirty, kind of moving on to the next season here.
Yeah. Well, I
With
mean, I'll say this, Ryan. I mean, as far as the last thoughts that I have about the finals and especially Game 7 is that I think both Denver and Indiana proved that OKC's not invincible. I think they
yeah,
came into this finals and we're like, oh, there's no way the Pacers are going to beat them. Everyone took them. If you listen to Two Words Wolves Pod, you'll remember I took the Pacers in 6, and so they were close. I mean, ish, as close as you can be, right? For given the fact that they lost the series, but it is a thing where no matter how good the Oklahoma City Thunder will be, because again, you don't think they're going to get worse next year. They're going to have more experience, internal growth of the young guys. They have a lot of young guys, even Nikola Topic. I mean, I doubt he plays a lot, but he's probably going to come in and play some minutes. I don't think they're losing anyone this offseason, so they're going to get better. But all that said, luck matters, whether it's health, whether it's matchups, whatever it is. And so I think, this ultimately showed that the Wolves shouldn't, I don't feel personally that the Wolves should be replicating what the Thunder are doing or trying to rebuild their team to what Indiana does, or only build their team to only beat OKC, because you never know. Again, I'm not trying to put negative energy out there, but who knows, if the Thunder are the receiving end of, injury or whatever the case is in the playoffs, all of a sudden the Wolves are playing someone else in the offseason that's not named the Thunder, for a chance for Western Conference Finals or for the NBA Finals. So again, anything can happen. OKC, they did everything in their power to stack the odds in their favor within the rules of the game, and things turn out in their way. But again, it doesn't happen with a lot of luck still too.
yeah, and that's a good point that'll kind of bridge us into this Kevin Durant discussion we're going to have. Is I've seen a lot of people, especially once like the details of a potential Wolves Kevin Durant trade, and it was like too much or whatever. People were kind of saying, "Look at Indiana. Do you think a 38-year-old Kevin Durant was going to play in these finals? Look, you need depth. Both of these teams have depth." And I agree, like that's something you should strive for. But I push back against a little bit this idea of looking at the current champion or the current finals and being like, "That's how you got to play. We got to
Right.
copycat that." I just think like that is one way to get there. Having depth, like I'm not saying I would strive for that as something that teams should go after, but I just think that when people try to in sports, especially in baseball, people do this, but in all sports, you're trying to find this like formula. Okay, if we have this, that, and the other, that's going to lead to a title, and it should be good. That's the only like so baseball. People are like, well, you gotta have, if a team wins the title, you gotta have starting pitching, and it's like, or if a team with a good bullpen, it's like, well, then see, that's what you need. Or if teams are just hitting a bunch of homers, like, hey, you need that. It's like, no, just be good. That's that is the bet. There, whatever like trend you want to find is never going to be just be good. And that's as like we've getting these new titles. The last two teams who win the title have been the best in the NBA. The team before it was a 1 seed, and the Denver Nuggets have clearly shown to be like, especially when they had KCP and Bruce Brown, like they're obviously like they're clearly the best team in the NBA that year. But like, look at each of these different finals teams. I don't think a lot of them, like how they're built, have a lot in
Yeah,
common,
similar, right?
other than being just damn good. What do the Bucks have that the Bucks with Giannis and Middleton are a completely different team than the Curry, Clay Warriors and Jordan Poole Warriors, and the Nuggets are completely different than that. Like I just think
Yeah.
be good. I don't. That was my biggest takeaway from the Wolves OKC series. The Wolves didn't play good enough. They didn't play nearly as well as their opponent, and that's my biggest takeaway from these finals.
Yeah.
Indiana's just better than the Wolves. I think that's just true. Game 4 in the Wolves series frustrated me because I thought the Wolves had a chance to make and win the finals, and I still, to a certain extent, feel like that. But part of me is also just like Indiana would have kicked their butt too. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think that there's magical formula that even for me, like I always kind of tout like you need one of the 50 greatest players in the history of basketball to win the title. And I still kind of think that's true. As much as I don't want to put SJ in that category, he's going to be. If you win an MVP in the finals MVP, in your career, you're going to be one of the, like, that's just how it works. But the Wolves have that. That's the biggest thing. Just keep putting solid teams around Ant, however you find it.
Yeah.
And one of the ways, go ahead.
Oh, no. Sorry. I was going to say, was that, I mean, I totally agree with a lot of what you're saying. I think that, with the parity, right? You have all these different champions over the last however many years. And you said they're all built differently. But when you do see a true dynasty, like say the Warriors dynasty, right? Like their true dynasty years, the mid 2010s, that's when you knew that, okay, well, there was a way that the game was actually changing because they won so many titles. Like until the Thunder are winning 2 or 3 in a row or whatever, that's like, okay, maybe they're onto something that the rest of the teams need to catch up to, where the Warriors are so good they revolutionized the way that the 3-point shooting and the spacing and all that type of stuff. And again, they still had potentially 2, and if you include KD, potentially 3 of the best jump shooters of all time on their team to be able to pull that off. So you saw the Thunder try and replicate it, or not the Thunder, the Rockets try and replicate it, and it didn't work out for them. They got close, they didn't get there, but again, that changed it. But yeah, for right now with all these different teams winning, you can't just go off that. So I agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah, and like with OKC, people point to, well, they never made the all-in trade. They never like mortgaged their future for the, and that's great. It's impressive that they were able to. I mean, they have not only are they sitting champions though? They have the best trade assets, basically, at least as far as draft picks that a team could want. So it wasn't that long ago that the Raptors made a crazy all-in trade and won the title. The Bucks certainly went all in to get their title. And for every one of those, there's a Warriors team that absolutely whiffed on a 2 overall pick and had Kuminga and Moody and all this. Like, I just don't think there's any one way to win the title. And the only like I said, the only best indicator is having one of the 50 greatest players of all time, and the Wolves isn't at that level yet, but I think
track, yeah.
I think we can project him as having that as a potential ceiling, certainly.
Sure.
But yeah, let's move on to the Kevin Durant saga. So to recap, before we get into kind of the Howl or Foul segment based on this, I want to kind of give a recap as far as like I saw it, and it's the reporting from others, specifically John Krasinski came out. And I want to mention John here because you got to take what Shams says with a grain of salt. It's not that he's ever lying or making stuff up. All his stuff is accurate, but it's coming from someone. And it's not that you should ignore what he says, but always look at what the local people are saying. And John was always saying the Wolves were never, since the end of the season, the Wolves were never close to on Durant. He said that multiple times in tweets, and I think that was shown tonight to be true. I think what happened is the Wolves had the best offer for Kevin Durant.
Allegedly.
But they never made that offer because Kevin Durant basically said, I'm not going there. And for any team, and specifically this team, they were not going to mortgage. And if they could have just gotten an unhappy Durant for quote unquote free, sure, they would have, you just risk it, whatever. But they weren't going to give up what was allegedly the trade would have been something like Rudy, Dante, and either Dillingham or the 17th pick or Terrence Shannon Jr. or an extra young asset or two. Personally, I would never have thrown Dillingham and Rudy into that trade. You're just left with no quality point guards or centers. Personally, if the trade was like Randall and Dante plus the 17th pick, that to me that's a package that far outweighs what Phoenix got, especially if Phoenix is not trying to blow it up. But the Wolves never made that trade. The Wolves never put that on the table because they needed some sort of assurance that Durant either would be cool coming to Minnesota or wanted to. And that this Durant thing's been bubbling for 6 months. We were talking about it on Press Row like almost every night coming on the stretch of the season. And it was all the assumption that Durant not only would want to come to Minnesota, but would do what he did with Houston and kind of finagle his way to Minnesota, and the exact opposite happened. He specifically said, basically through Shams or through whoever else, that he did not want to play in Minnesota. And I think that's tough to hear, because if he did, I think he'd be in Minnesota. If he did want to play in Minnesota, I think he'd be in Minnesota Timberwolf right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's all this is, alleged reporting again. We'll never truly know, but I think none of us, whether it's media or fans or whoever, quote unquote sauces, I mean, we don't have a right to really doubt Tim Conley, I think, at this point. Now, you can have opinions. You can say, like, oh, I think that, or I think that, or I believe this. But, I mean, Tim Conley has steered this ship as good as you could have steered it in the past handful of years. Of course, he's not 100%. I mean, there's, your Wendell Moores and, there's things like that that, didn't always work out. But at the same time, like, he's done such a good job that if he felt that the Wolves, whether, had enough or should have gone more, or the, asking price is too high, that we should believe that, what he's doing is probably the right decision. So, I am more than comfortable for that. For those of you that maybe missed it, or just to recap, the Phoenix Suns ended up trading Kevin Durant, who is on a final year of his deal, for $55 million. He is 36 years old, going to be turning 37 in September. And he was traded to the Houston Rockets for Jalen Green, who still has 3 years left, $105 million, about 33 per year on his deal. Dylan Brooks, who has 2 years, $40 million, so about 20 and 20. The number 10 pick in the draft, which is originally the Phoenix Suns trade pick, one of 3 that the Houston Rockets currently hold by way of the Nets, and 5 future second rounders. So that is what they ended up going for. Now, I'm sure within the next, probably this summer, it's going to be hammered out what type of extension KD may end up getting. And if he doesn't, then it's like, all right, well, another shoe is probably going to fall during the season. So our first how or foul for this, as we kind of move our way down this trade, Ryan, the Phoenix Suns got a good return in the trade with the Houston Rockets. How or foul?
I guess it depends on where are you making this determination? They got the best deal that was on the table. So I guess in that sense, I'm saying how that the deals that were on the table as of Sunday, June 22nd, this was the best one that was there, because the Spurs never wanted to go all in, or the Spurs never wanted to put in any of their decent assets. The Heat were the same thing. And because of the Durant thing, the Wolves never were. I mean, of course, like, think about it from the Wolves' perspective, especially. I think to a certain extent the Spurs were a little, and the Heat were a little. I'm not sure why those teams wouldn't want to, given the price that we saw. I don't know why they wouldn't have been more interested, but clearly, for the Wolves, like, trying to trade for Durant had gigantic pros and gigantic cons. It was a fine needle that you would have had to thread if you made that trade. And so the minute there's any sort of doubt from Durant, it makes no sense for the Wolves. So, like, the Wolves just had no offer. So what the Suns are left with is a Jalen Green contract. That's not even a positive contract. You're paying Jalen Green like $50 million a year. We saw what he looked like in the playoffs. Like, I mean, and if they don't trade him, what the heck is their roster? They don't have a point guard. They don't have a big. They have a bunch of wing. And the Phoenix is just in an awful spot. Dylan Brooks, 2 years, 40 is fine. It's a fine enough rotation player, I guess. But, like, for Kevin Durant, you get the 10 pick in the draft in 5 seconds. To me, it's just like, what are they trying to do? Where are they? Are they trying to win? Because their roster is garbage. And even if they flip Jalen Green for, like, a similar level player that fits their positionals better, or they hit a home run and get like a lively type at the 10 pick, or they can flip these 5 seconds into whatever, like, you're just so far behind the 8 ball. You have nothing left. You're so far away. And if you're trying to punt on and rebuild, why weren't you able to get Houston's pick? Houston has your picks. How did you not get any of those? That's insane to me. I personally, if I was Phoenix, instead of taking this deal, I would have just said, Minnesota's got our best offer. If you don't want to go there, and they're not going to trade you, but because of that, then you're just going to sit on the bench. I honestly kind of think that would have been a better way for the Suns to go. And I think the counter to that would be like, well, then you're just a laughing stock. You got a Hall of Fame player just wilting on your bench. And like, yeah, that's why I think this is bad. I don't see how this is in any way helping them. I would have tried to, I mean, the Kevin Durant thing is crazy too, because the Warriors had a deal lined up for him in the offseason, and he nixed that too.
Right.
I kind of lost some respect for Kevin Durant through this whole thing, and maybe it took me long enough because he did the same thing in Brooklyn. He did the same thing in basically Golden State. Like, he says he's all about basketball, but like these roster maneuver moves don't follow that up. Some of the on the court stuff has not been his fault for his teams not succeeding. Other years there was that one first round exit in Brooklyn where and in the Wolves series, I thought he was not very good in that series. He was getting guarded by Karl Anthony Towns, and you're Kevin Durant. How many times in that series was Kevin Durant just like Hall of Fame kicking ass in that series? Zippo.
Right.
So in that sense, I don't know. I'm all over the place, but no, I don't think Phoenix got a good return. But on the flip side, this is what it was. So what do you think?
Yeah, I like how you came back to note because, yeah, I am Bugs Bunny meme knowing to this one as well too. They did not get the best return here. Again, I don't know for sure what all the deals were out there. So yeah, okay, maybe I don't know for sure this is the worst one. But Tommy Beer on he covers the Knicks on Blue Sky put out that the Rockets have made five top 20 picks in the past 3 years, past three drafts. Amin Thompson, Jabari Smith, Cam Whitmore, Tari Eason, and Reed Shepard. And the Suns couldn't pry any of them from Houston in a deal for Kevin freaking Durant. Like, I understand that, sure, yeah, Jalen Green, okay, he can score points. He's good if you like sports betting on points or playing fantasy basketball. Like, that's great. But he's not a winning type of player. If you watch that Warriors Rockets season series, he had one good game and four absolute stinkers where he shouldn't even have been on the court. So he's still young. I'm not saying that he can't evolve anymore, but he kind of is what he is. But the problem that you mentioned is that contract. I mean, that's a lot of money to be contributing to a guy that, has not proven he can play at that level yet. And then meanwhile, I bring that up because some of these other guys, like your, Reed Shepherds and your, Jabari Smiths, even, or your Amin Thompsons, where, uh, some of these younger guys are on shorter deals, on these shorter rookie scale deals. And that's what you want, right? If you're trying to put together a competitive team, that you need depth at a smaller price. And they couldn't get that. The Athletic reported that the Rockets refused to include young players, Reed Shepard, Jabari Smith, and Tari Eason. Team sources told Athletic. The Rockets refused to give up also the Suns' 27 unprotected and 29 unprotected pick swap as well, no matter how motivated the Suns were to recruit those prize picks. So they basically told them, no, we're not giving up three of our favorite young guys as well as two of the best picks that we own of yours. And the Suns were like, okay. So to me, that just screams like they cornered themselves in this
Yeah.
shitty spot.
I just think if that's all true, and obviously it was, I just think Phoenix had to play hardball more and go to Durant and be like, hey, we're not getting any good offers. You can either expand your list of teams that you want to go to, making it at all possible for us to trade you, or you're going to sit here as a malcontent. I don't understand why they wouldn't do that, and especially if I'm Phoenix, I am in any trade with Houston. I'm drawing a hard line in the sand. We are getting our pick back. Maybe not both. The first one, we're getting that back. And I just I wouldn't trade with Houston if not getting that back. I would be begging for Durant. If they're trying to keep their team alive and not blow it up, I'd be begging Durant.
Sure.
How Minnesota's a good spot because you could have gotten Gobert and DiVincenzo. DiVincenzo is a better. How much?
He's a better player than either. Yeah.
Here's a good. Would you trade DiVincenzo for the number 10 pick and 5 future second? I would.
No, not in his contract. No, yeah.
Would you trade him DiVincenzo? I think would get you a better trade. It's hard because the money difference, but DiVincenzo alone gets you a better trade package than Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, and what they just got for Durant. I think the Wolves could get a better trade haul for Dante DiVincenzo than the Suns just got for Kevin Durant.
Yep.
And then you add Julius in there or add Rudy in there. I just would have, if I'm the Suns, I would have tried so much harder to get any sort of better deal than this, and even risk looking like a laughingstock more than they already are, because I just I knew the trade was going to be bad, and I mean, we can move into the next howl or foul.
Well, yeah,
Houston made out like. Go ahead.
well, sorry. Go ahead, Ryan. So, I was gonna get there, right? Where John Gambadaro, I hope I'm not mispronouncing his name. He covers the Phoenix Suns, and he's been on their beat for a long time. He's nailed a lot of things that, rumors and leaks about the Suns, and he had said that by all accounts, the Suns are not planning on moving Jalen Green. That they want to see how he fits with this team, which is
I
like
don't buy it.
yeah, I don't buy that because you look at their roster, it's all SFs on their team. And Nick Richards and whoever else they have, what other skeleton they have playing center right now. So, all that said is that like, you know, Phoenix clearly hired. I think Zach Harper put this where it's like, it's probably not a good idea to hire a failed college basketball coach with zero GM experience to be your lead GM going to a very important offseason, because that's kind of what it feels like. And, our next Howl or Foul one, I'm going to kind of combine both of them, that Houston made out like bandits in this trade. And so that's going to make a finals run harder for Minnesota. So Howl or Foul, do you believe that this makes Houston a legit threat to impact the Timberwolves in their next run?
Yeah, I mean, they obviously made out like bandits. I don't know how you could even like. There's risks with KD and all of this, and we'll see. I don't like the biggest thing that worried me with the Durant trade for Minnesota's perspective was this extension that he wants, like 60 mil a year, especially for a Wolves team that wants to keep Jaden and keep. I think that's dangerous, and I'd have to really dig into like Houston's cap situation to figure out if, basically, not this upcoming season, but the season after that and 2 seasons after that, if they're in financial trouble. They probably aren't, because Jalen Green, they just got off of 50 million of Jalen Green. But like the Wolves were just, if they're paying Durant 60 million a year and Ant a similar number, like it was just gonna be tough for them. But given, I mean, even if they somehow don't get an extension done, Durant walks, Houston's fine. They might even be a better spot because now
Yep.
they're off of Jalen Green's money. That's not so bad. But yeah, for me, the more interesting question is almost, does this make the finals run harder? And I'm going to kind of go foul, only not because I don't think Houston's going to be. My thing with Houston is their best player is Kevin Durant. I don't think that 37-year-old Kevin Durant is good enough to win you a title, and that's what I'm looking at from Minnesota. Obviously, right this second, the Rockets are better than the Wolves. But ultimately, like, I'm just looking at these teams. Can you win a title? And I think the Rockets are going to be really, really damn good. But like I said, you need just like a 1A guy to win a title. And I don't know who that is for them.
Sure.
Because, like I said, if Durant's your best guy, I don't think that's good enough anymore. Even while saying that, I think the teams that didn't like kind of put their best foot forward to kind of get Durant are crazy. But I just like, to a certain extent, Oklahoma City is beatable. I think the Rockets are beatable too. But ultimately, they had one of the best defenses in the NBA, and they added Kevin Durant to that. So they're going to be really freaking good.
Yeah, I agree with you kind of on both accounts. I do think that, the Rockets, I mean, I just said, I mean, they refuse to give in their two most valuable picks they own of the Suns, who, again, the way the Suns are built right now, it's looking pretty juicy in a couple of years. And also give up three of their favorite young players. They got off the young player that they really didn't want, which was Jalen Green. And so, I think, yeah, they did really well with that. You're looking at a starting lineup potentially, as kind of reported, is Fred VanVleet, who's in his 30s, Amin Thompson, who's rapidly improving, who's going to be going to his third year,
Yeah.
Kevin Durant, Alperen Şengün, All-Star, and then Jabari Smith, who again was rumored potentially not to have been included in the deal. I think he'll be best probably in this role as probably the fourth or fifth best player on the court, just kind of spotting up in the corners. But that said, whether they have Reed Shepard, Tyrese, and Cam Whitmore, I mean, those are other pieces that now the Thunder could use, or not Thunder, the Rockets could use to acquire pieces that fit better. So as far as are they going to be a threat to the Wolves in their finals run, I'm going to give it a very weak howl on my end. That's only current as of today. We're recording Sunday, June 22nd, because this can change very vastly in the next week or two. It really depends on what Tim Connelly has cooking for the Wolves, whether it's running it back, whether it's getting another point guard, getting Lonzo Ball, whatever it is. I do think that, like you said, you're looking at one of the best defensive teams in the league last season, in the Rockets. You're adding, one of the best offensive players in the game. Even though he's getting older, he was so absolutely outstanding for the the Suns last year, a lot of it will be based on his health. I mean, he played, I think, 60 some games this last season, and he will be turning 37. I think his years are limited, but he's not like some decrepit, like old, player that you're putting out there. So I do think it's going to be a little bit scary, but we'll see what happens because I do think the Wolves haven't fired their bullets yet this offseason.
Yeah, I agree. Like Houston will be a formidable foe. They're going to be really good next year. But ultimately, I just think the Wolves' title chances rely on what they're able to do themselves
Correct.
and what level Ant is able to get to next year. For the Wolves to win the title with this general type of roster they have now, Ant needs to be an MVP caliber player. He was not that this season, and I don't think he was that in the playoffs. And I think everyone expects him to be that. I think if the Wolves are going to be a title contender, you're going to see Ant as a first team All NBA guy finishing top 4 or 5 in the MVP voting. I mean, if you finish fourth and Giannis, Jokic, and SJ are in front of you, obviously that's a fantastic outcome. But if he's still in like the second team All NBA spot, the Wolves will still be a very, very good team. But that's their path is through Ant, and so the Durant trade doesn't really change that. While admitting, before the night Vegas probably had them as second favorites to win the West behind OKC, and now they're third favorites. So in that sense, yeah, it did get harder.
Murkier for sure. Yeah, because the Suns were kind of never really in the picture, and they're for sure not in the picture the way they're built right now. So that doesn't really change at all. So we'll go to our last one here about the KD topic. So this trade, the Kevin Durant to Rockets trade, means that the Timberwolves are done chasing big pieces this summer. Ryan, how or foul?
I'm going to go foul. They're going to keep going after whatever they can find. It doesn't mean that that's their goal for the offseason, or like they're saying to themselves, we need to get out of this offseason with a completely different roster. I think they have a lot of different. They have a plan A, B, C, D, whatever. And one of those plans was trading for Durant, and it never came to fruition because of circumstances out of their control. As in, Durant didn't want to play in Minnesota for whatever reason. They have a lot of different paths, and one of those paths is likely bringing back last year's team, probably minus Nikhil. I think that's a likely path or a possible path. There's maybe like a similar one where it's that, and what if they're going to go after Lonzo, or like you're adding that like type of player instead of Nikhil, a slightly cheaper replacement in that spot. I think that's likely, or I should say possible. But I do think that they're going to try to trade for, I don't know, some big name. Like Zion would be interesting if there's any sort of path to health for him. I don't know, like Darius Garland's been in trade rumors. I don't think the Wolves really have I don't know what Cleveland would want that the Wolves have and would be willing to part with. So I think they're going to keep taking big swings. Connolly is going to keep going after it. But I think if it's certain, everything's on the table, whether it's making a big trade or running it back. I think, quote unquote, running it back. And I honestly think if they just ran back last year's team with a cheaper, I don't know, with like a point guard version of Nikhil or whatever, I think they'd be a top 3 seed in the West. I think a lot of their problems from this year wouldn't carry over. But yeah, what do you think? Are they done with the big stars?
Yeah, I'm going to say how. That I think they're done with the big game hunting. And the reason I'm saying that because I fully understand that when I say that, we're talking about Tim Connolly, a guy who last minute blew up the Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert Twin Towers type of thing. It's probably not two good words to put together there, but that he gave up on the Gobert Cat pairing, and that he had Julius Randle, and 2 years ago he kind of out of nowhere lands Rudy Gobert. So I totally understand that. Tim is probably cooking something we have no idea what is in the kitchen right now. But that said, I think the reported uncertainty of KD's future in Minnesota seems to have been the major hang-up. So that tells me that Tim Connolly's betting on building a team that has like long-term continuity. And I'm wearing a shirt right now that Jake Scraps made 2020, 2021. It's has all their faces drawn on here. We still have this guy, Anthony Edwards, right here. We're trying to bring back Nas Reed. We have Jaden McDaniels. Like, I think Tim Connolly's betting on these guys. So I don't think that they're necessarily looking to try and blow it up. Not to say blow it up, but bringing a huge name, like you said. I don't believe in the Garland team. there was some random reckless speculation, shout out Flagrant House, on John Morant. I don't believe that's steam either. I think it'll be some marginal moves, like I said, for Lonzo Ball, maybe some vet minimums. I do think that, yeah, like you said, maybe if Nikhil walks, we use that money to bring in someone else that can help with the ball handling responsibilities if Rob's not quite ready or they don't land someone during the draft. But I do think that, I've heard, kind of not going to unnamed sources out there that Tim Connelly has been knocking on KD's door for over a year. That this isn't something that just started at the trade deadline. That this is something that he's been working on. And the fact that KD kind of last minute was like, you know what, I kind of want to go to my home state or whatever the case is, or to Miami. That kind of threw a wrench in it. And so he's like, all right, that's fine. We'll let it go. We don't want to overpay. And so I think that was what he was cooking for a long time. And I think that kind of leaked during the trade deadline and kind of bled over into this. So, but I think they're done with the big moves. Yeah.
I do think there's a scenario where Tim just goes, whatever, we'll get him in here and he'll, or maybe Tim doesn't do this, but a different GM does that, where just like they'll be fine. We'll trade him, and the Wolves if they want to do that, they could have. I think if they would have put Rudy and Dante on the table, plus like the 17th pick, and I still, because the Wolves just need a point guard of the future, I would just be so hesitant to put Dillingham in anything. But for me, if Durant wanted to be here, I would have done Rudy. I prefer Julius to be in the trade, but I would have done Rudy and Dante in the 17th pick in a heartbeat for me.
Yeah.
But the minute KD didn't want to be here, it was no longer worth it for the Wolves. And I think a lesser GM would have just like you said, spent a whole bunch of time trying to get Durant here, and they would have just said,
put him on a helicopter and recruit him, right?
That's a fantastic parallel. Is D'Lo had a wide open path to come to Minnesota, and he opted out of that, and the Wolves traded for him anyway. And it worked is the right word, but we'll always have the Clippers game, D'Lo, the playing game. But it fell apart the minute the Wolves traded for one guy D'Lo didn't like, which is Rudy. And so I think that a Kevin Durant trade would have had similar parallels where, sure, they probably would have gotten KD settled and had a great games, but it would have taken one thing. And I just think the minute KD doesn't want to be here and is actively trying to get himself to Houston, I just think you had to let it go. And it stinks. I do think it stinks that if he did the opposite and he was saying, I don't want to go to Houston, I want to go to Minnesota, he'd be here. And the Wolves would be Western Conference not favorites, OKC would be, but they'd be in a really good spot. And it stinks. And I don't want to come off as hating on KD because he's not on my team, but from a Wolves perspective, it does stink because I do think that they did build this pathway to getting Kevin Durant, a Hall of Famer, guy that just averages 28 points on 50, 40, 90 shooting almost every single season. The Wolves could have really used that guy, especially if, to me, you slide him into that Julius Randle role, and it just works so perfectly. Especially if that's a situation where you still have Gobert, and I just think that, but it's not worth beating our heads in about it.
Right, yeah.
And to be honest, I'm glad to be done with it. I'm glad to be on the other side of it. And of course, the Ant's eternal words ring in everyone's minds. They got KD, they got Kevin Durant, but we got Jaden McDaniels. So
that's right, baby.
That's where we're moving. Well, lastly, we got the NBA draft on Wednesday, and I know, Leo, you want to talk about some of the upcoming prospects. Personally, for me, and I'm willing to talk about, I just have no idea on any of these guys, and even other than Cooper Flag, I don't know much about these guys. But I'm willing to go through it with you and talk about what the Wolves can do. They have the 17th and 31st pick for a team that made the Western Conference Finals. Obviously, Oklahoma City puts this type of thing to shame, but usually you make the Western Conference Finals and you don't have the 2 picks in the top 31. The Wolves do, and they have a lot of different ways they could go. They could trade 17. I kind of think that's my personal thing I would do, because 17th pick gets paid $2.5 million more than the league minimum. So I think that's an important. If you could theoretically trade the 17th pick this year for the 20th pick next year, I would do that in a heartbeat. Given the Wolves don't have a ton of rotational spots either.
Sure.
But who are some of your? I see you got some guys written down,
Yeah.
so I'll kind of hand it over to you.
Of course, yeah. I mean, it's one of those when you talk about trading picks. I mean, Tim Connolly's a guy that is more than happy to move picks. We've seen him operate on both ends. I mean, most recently we saw him make the number 8 pick appear out of thin air to get Rob Dillingham last season, and the season before that, or 2 seasons before that, I think it was that where they had Jake LaRavia or they had the 19th pick, which ended up being Jake LaRavia, and he moved down. That turned it into Walker Kessler and Wendell Moore Jr., who are both no longer on the team. So we've seen them go both ways, trade up and trade down. So you never know, but. I will say this. I want to plug the Day Moore pod. He had Tyler Metcalf. They're both former Canis Hoopus alums. And they had a pod recently where they did a deep dive on draft prospects. And I've been wrapping up my research and review. And this weekend, I created a couple grids, and I'll post them on social media tomorrow, illustrating like players in our general draft range. I feel like on the y-axis is like development versus a project player versus a developed player. On the x-axis is like their offensive skill set. So I'll post that up. So I've been doing my research, but again, I definitely encourage you to check out Dane's podcast with Tyler, because again, Tyler is like a draft expert, so he definitely knows more than me. But I do want to go through just a couple quick names of players that I think that they should be looking at, whether it's the 17th pick or the 31st pick. Feel free, Ryan, to chime in wherever you want. And I'll break it down by bigs, wings, and guards, just in those 3 general positions that they're kind of filed in. So first, we'll start with bigs. And the reason I start with bigs is because it's been painfully obvious that it feels like the Timberwolves' ceiling has been capped by their offense. We saw that this year a little bit with what they could do and how much better they kind of played. It's been capped by a non-shooting big, whether or not Rudy's still on the team. And so there's been rumors that the front office is looking to pursue a front court player with the 17th pick. And so I really don't like the options that are there at 17. I think that there's a lot of players that I like that would be picked above that. A lot of players in the second range in the 30s. So at 31, I would love to draft Maxime Reynaud. He's a 22-year-old, legit 7-footer, played at Stanford, and he's a super smart kid, math major, like engineering, that type of beat. But he's French. He grew up in France, and he's been playing in Stanford. He averaged 20 points, 10 rebounds his last season. He's a bit slower on that end, but he moves really smoothly. He's not like a Brook Lopez, like really kind of ground-bound type of dude. He has really great touch around the paint. He's probably the most reliable shooter within the bigs in this complete draft. I mean, there's guys like Ryan Kalkbrenner, who's Defensive Player of the Year, that's shown some shooting ability, but Maxime right now was shooting over 5 attempts from 3 and pick and pops and just kind of spot ups in the corner. He shot 35% on them, and that's about as he moved into the draft combine, he shot as well as Con Kneppel and Trey Johnson, who many people consider 2 of the best shooters of any position in the draft. So at the combine, he did really, really well in that. And he was 100% from threes at the combine. So the Ringer has Maxime Reynaud at 31. Sam Vecini of the Athletic has him about 30, which is right perfect for that range. Tim Connolly has shown that he is willing to draft, a big dude in Walker Kessler that obviously ended up trading, but I like him with that 31st. And I'll throw one last name, Joan Berenger. He's an 18-year-old, also big out of France. He's a huge dude. He's really that Rudy mold, huge dude. He has like a 9-foot wingspan. That's kind of that mad scientist pick, but he definitely would be someone that have to go at 17 because he's for sure going to be gone by the 20s.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what type of player they're kind of going after. For me personally, I would not with the 31st pick, given like the salary around it, I would kind of more want like some sort of project, so to speak, because I just think the Wolves rotation is going to be fairly full next year. Given that, I mean, if we're assuming either 2 of Julius Nas and Nikhil are back, assuming we got 2 of those 3 guys back. I mean, so that's 7 of your 8, or even if it's one of the guys you're bringing in someone else to replace that, whatever. That's 7 of your 8 rotation players, and you're certainly adding Terrence to that. You're going to add Rob to that. You'd imagine, at least on some level, that's 9. Jalen Clark is 10. I don't see like where they're going to have guys. So if you're going to actually spend this pick and not trade it for something down the road, I would like to see something like they're willing to kind of sit on, have them play in the G League, get some minutes down there, and not some like, I mean, obviously Terrence is an incredible success at where they picked him, but like I don't think that's necessarily like the player mold they should be targeting.
For sure. Yeah, and that's fair. I mean, I think when you're talking 31st pick, I mean, these are most likely two-way guys that they're going to be taking, the place of a Jesse Edwards or something like that. He'll be occupying that. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't expect someone at 31 to be playing meaningful rotation minutes. So it'll definitely be a development type of thing. So yeah, I think project definitely makes sense. I'm gonna move on to the wings, Ryan. For the wings, the most popular name that a lot of people have been hearing out there, that I also personally like, is Cedric Coward. I've been rolling with the hype after all the listening, watching, and studying that I've done on Coward. I watched him break down some of his own tape on YouTube's account, Leak Him, where he met up with that channel and they broke down, I think it was like 20 minutes of tape with them. He was super, super impressive in that. I think he was very, very self aware, knows what he needs to improve on. He's very critical of his own game, which is a good sign. So if you're not familiar with Colin Coward, Cedric Coward, he's a 21-year-old, 6'5", big body, 200 plus pounds, shooter with a crazy 7'2" wingspan. He's one of those like unheralded dudes. He had a really interesting journey. He started at D3. He was not recruited in high school almost at all, but he would have gone all the way up. He had a transfer offer from Duke. If he didn't join the draft, he would have been playing on Duke this year. Wild development curve. He's arguably one of the best shooters in the draft, who could do a lot of a little. He was injured for most of the year playing at Washington this last year at Washington State. So he only played in 6 games. So I think it's that small sample size that's a little scary. Really reminds me of Aaron Neesmith, who showed, I think he only played like 12 games at Vanderbilt in his year, and he shot a crazy percentage. We were like, oh, is this real? But people weren't sure because he was injured as well too. And so I think we saw that obviously Aaron Neesmith became a very, very valuable rotation player for a finals contender. Sam Vecini has Cedric Coward going as high up as 9, and the Ringer has him at 15. So if he somehow falls to 17, I would not hesitate at all. I very much support any type of a move into the early teens if he's available. If the price is just like a Josh Minot or Leonard Miller, a guy who's not really a real part of the rotation as of right now. And then lastly, the only other guy I'll mention here is Nick Clifford. He's very happily would be my backup, who's most likely will be available at 17. He's a do-it-all older prospect as well too. I think he's 22 going on 23, and he's really developed a strong perimeter game in terms of his shooting. He really developed. He's a high 30, I think 37% 3-point shooter. He does a lot of a lot. Basically, he can play pretty much any position 2 through 4. 2, 3, or 4 is comfortable. Great rebound, solid defender, smart passer and cutter, athletic. Really like Nick Clifford at 17. Of Colin. Oh my God, I did it again. I'm just gonna say Coward. His last name Coward is not available at 17.
Yeah, hopefully they don't pick Colin Coward. We don't need radio hosts playing basketball. Yeah, that's as much as I want to trade like the 17th pick if you can get value, and that is something Tim said at his exit interview. That like if they are able to get like a rotation caliber player, trading one or both of 17 or 31, I think they would pull the trigger on that. You'd imagine if they are going after Lonzo, if again, kind of similar like with the the Zion rumors, like that's an injury guy that you got to have some sort of faith that they're going to be healthy. But can you imagine if they're going after that? Like the 17th pick would be something that Chicago would or should want. But if someone like Coward that some experts or teams have projected in the top 10 falls to 17, that'd be something. I don't know if like Ace Bailey, I know that's been like a big guy that's been dropping. I think like the Michael Porter Jr. parallels there. I don't think he's going to fall all the way to 17, right? But certainly for Tim, that'd be a nice corollary there between him and MPJ.
Yeah, Ace Bailey. I mean, I won't go super deep into him, like you said, but it's similar to like a Michael Porter Jr. situation, or even a Cam Whitmore situation, where recently, where at some point in their college season, they were projected as a top 5 guy, super athletic, could really shoot when they get hot, type of thing. But there's some attitude injury issues. MPJ and Cam Whitmore both had a little bit of injury concerns that Ace Bailey doesn't necessarily have. But yeah, I mean, it is one of those. He could be that falling knife, and Tim has shown in the past that he's willing to, take a swing, on those high upside guys. So that'll take me into the guards, though, as the final part of this. Similar to the bigs, I don't really like the range of guards that are available at 17. There's not a lot of great, guard guys in here. It seems a little too early for a lot of the dudes that I like. And so I think 31 is also a little bit too late as well, too, because there's not that many great, promising young guys. Maybe some draft and stashes over there. But if we somehow end up in the 20s, say we trade down a little bit like we did when we traded the 18th or 19th pick, that was Jake LaRavia down to the Walker Kessler area in the 20s. I like Walton Clayton Jr. Most of us know him from his NCAA championship run, where he looked like Steph Curry out there. I mean, he was bombing threes from all over. He shot a crazy percentage. He's a little bit older. He's 22 years old. Grew a lot as a playmaker in his last season at Florida. Right there, really, really improved that. Standing at 6'2", he just kind of has like a meh wingspan, but he was like pristine in his shooting drills at the combine as well. It looks super ready right now. Sam Vecini has him at 19 at the Athletic. Ringer has him at 25, so he is in that like early 20s range right there. Again, is he going to play minutes immediately? I don't know. But if they do draft someone like that, I think that's an indication of how they feel about kind of that point guard or lead ball handler market in this offseason. Separate from that, I'll throw in my second name in here. Guy I like the best as a guard in this draft is Kasparas Jakučionis, Lithuanian guard, played at Illinois, where Terrence Shannon Jr. played. He's certainly a top 10 guy in my book. I would support a move up for him if he's available. I think he's the strongest balance of can really shoot and really pass, but I said I was only going to do two, but I have to throw in his third name, which is Egor Demin. Played at BYU, Russian player, huge recruit. He's kind of for those Ricky Rubio, early Lonzo Ball lovers, who he just throws these wild, crazy passes, really sees the game at a different level. I really come around on him in terms of an NBA prospect with a lot more space, and he'll be playing with a lot better players. He just has like slim to no scoring ability, which doesn't really fit in today's NBA in 2025. But again, those are two of the more like kind of, wild cards out there that I would love to see.
Yeah, and with all these guys, it's like you kind of got to rely on Tim for who you look, and he's done a really good job. I think, like you said, there's misses with Wendell, and Leonard Miller's been slow to kind of pick it up. But I mean, when you're not picking in the top 10, there's no guarantees, and if you're able, I mean, like Jalen Clark and Terrence Shannon alone as picks, um, are solid outcomes in where they're picking. Now you get kind of in the 17th pick, and you have a little bit more chance to find something there. But I'm interested. I'm mostly just seeing, like, are they even going to pick anyone? Are they going to trade out of it? Are they going to, do they have a draft night trade? I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what they do. Do you have kind of a preference between any of the guys you've listed or a position group?
Oh yeah, I mean, I would love Cedric Howard. I think that's again similar to kind of he's a very different game than Terrence Shannon Jr. But in terms of like a guy that I feel like can produce a lot earlier than we think. Again, we may not have the minutes, but you're not necessarily just drafting for guys that are only projects. I mean, I think Tim is willing to show that he'll draft guys that are willing to contribute now as well too. I mean, you never know what kind of trades are still going to happen. You just want to, you never know what players other teams want. I mean, who's to say that if the Wolves didn't draft Walker Kessler, would they have gotten Rudy Gobert? Maybe, but it's very clear that Tim liked Walker Kessler, and the Jazz also really liked him as well too, and that was part of their trade. So again, whoever you draft doesn't necessarily have to be the person that's best for your team right now. It could be the best for someone else's team. He could be moved later on. So yeah, I love Cedric Howard. I'll name off just three names on the opposite side that I don't really like. I won't go through my full notes with them. But as far as the bigs, I am out on Noah Essengate, also a French. They call him kind of a French Jaden McDaniels type beat, super skinny, tall. But I feel like he's more of a Bruno Caboclo, the 2 years away from being 2 years away. A little bit too early for me on that. And then another wing that I don't like is Drake Powell. Super young, super athletic guard out of North Carolina. He has a really broken shot unless he's the next coming of Ryan Dunn. I think we have enough super athletes that, we're banking on a jump shot. So a little bit too repetitive for me. And then with guard, I am not big on Jace Richardson, son of former NBA player Jason Richardson, who's for sure probably going to go number 10 to Phoenix because hashtag Spartans and Matt Ishbia's love for them there. But he's a 6 foot undersized score first guard, only plays with one hand, doesn't really pass or play make well, and also not a good defender. Just again, feels like a terrible fit here. So those are three guys that I would really do not want.
Yeah, one podcast I was listening to, I think said Richardson is under 6 feet, like it's 5'11".
Yeah, he's
And it's
6
just,
foot in shoes. Yeah.
yeah, it's just hard to imagine like that type of player being successful in the NBA. I mean, you look at like Isaiah Thomas and how much like basketball skill it took for him to have a solid career. It's hard to imagine, but like you said, maybe Ishbia is going to start drafting some Michigan State players. I mean, who knows with Ishbia? It's just such a disaster going on, especially given like what Brooklyn was able to trade Mikal Bridges for. Insane.
Yeah. It's one of those where I think any day now we'll be getting that Board of Governors vote for the new ownership. Hopefully, even by the time you're listening to this pod, that the news have broken that they passed the vote. But we'll see. They should be coming this week, and that'll be interesting as well too. Because again, I think we've had a steady hand these last 2 to 3 years, and hopefully that continues.
Yeah, it's gonna come fast, and then the rest of the offseason will go really slow. But yeah, finishing this out with our 2 words. Mine is New Year. The league year, New Year starts tomorrow. We're gonna go right from this Game 7 to the draft and free agency and all that. It's gonna be crazy. Like you said, the ownership things will finally be settled. I think we're going to see a lot of changes with the Minnesota Timberwolves. Maybe not necessarily immediate on the court changes, but I think the business side is going to change a lot. We already saw 2 longtime business staffers kind of once the sale goes finalized, those guys will be
moving on.
Those guys will be moving on. So that's just an immediate change already. CEO Ethan Casson and COO Ryan Tanke have both been with the Timberwolves a long time. And a lot of the stuff you see day to day with the Timberwolves, those guys were in charge of that. And so that's just like the first step of change that's going to happen. And I think the business side will obviously change a bit more quicker than whatever on the court changes we'll see. We've probably already seen a lot of the changes in that sense, and the business side especially. But it's going to start moving pretty quick. And for better or worse, I think the Minnesota Timberwolves are going to look a lot different.
Yeah, no, I like that as well too. It's, we can finally put a bow on 2025 now that it's over. Congratulations again to the Thunder. Prayers up for the Pacers and Tyrese Haliburton in specific. But yeah, it was a hell of a year. It was a crazy finish. I think we couldn't have wished for a more dramatic and kind of interesting year for sure. My 2 words, Ryan, is not bridesmaids. And I say that because when we talk about Kevin Durant, I don't want y'all listeners and Wolves fans to feel like that very special episode of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air where Will gets left behind by his, biological father that he meets, and he's talking to Uncle Phil, R.I.P., and he starts crying, breaking down. He goes like, "Man, how come he don't want me, man?" I don't want us to feel like that because Katie wasn't meant for us, and we didn't necessarily need him. Okay, I mean, it was a fun thought experiment. Maybe he would have fit great on our team, sure, but I mean, it kept us entertained for, if you want to call it entertained, for about a month, and we got through that off season, where again the draft is literally, by the time you're listening to this, 48 hours away, and there's better things ahead. There's a lot of fun things ahead. There's a draft. There's a free agency. We have extensions. Let your imagination run wild. It doesn't just have to be Kevin Durant. It could be a number of things. Who knows? Steph Curry may be on his way to Minnesota right now. You have no idea what Tim Connelly's up to. This man's a wild man. So again, don't feel like we're the bridesmaids. Again, we can be main characters, and I think we've shown that this season that again we can really outperform our expectations.
Yeah, I think it's going to be. I don't think it's going to be straight. Last offseason, I guess, seemed like it was going to be straightforward. We're running back, and that obviously didn't happen until right before the season. Obviously, Cat gets traded, and I guess I would anticipate more changes this offseason. So maybe the curveball will be running it back with whatever form of roster they can bring back under the second apron. Whenever there's a big deal, I think Leo and I will try to do either next week or the end of this week. We'll try to do some sort of draft recap pod, and see what sort of, if the options of Nas and Randall get worked out here soon after the draft. But for now, 2-day draft for no good reason. No reason the second round should be on Thursday. Okay. Maybe it helps us at Canis because we get 2 days of content spread out. But
yes, sir.
Yeah, I guess check Leo and I out on Canis. But thanks everyone for listening to this long finals recap pod.
Get home, drive safe, everyone.
Go.
Hey you.